Hello everybody, I'm Avian and we've been working our way through how to make a Stardew Valley mod using my garden cottage mod that I'm currently in the process of creating. Today we're going to be talking about sprites, um, sizes, how to make a sprite, things to be aware of. So to start off with, we're going to start out by talking about dimensions and things to be aware of. This is the Stardew Valley wiki with the NPC modding page. I will include a link in the description so you can find it. And this has all sorts of pretty much everything you need to know about making an NPC. And they have their table of contents. I'm just going to click and we're going to jump back down to the sprite information. So if you ever need to remember any of this, reference sizes, anything like that, it's all right here. In the size, a sprite frame is going to be 16 by 32. And then your sprite sheet is basically a series of frames of your character in the different poses. So I'm going to show you one of my sprites. This is going to be my Howie sprite. He is one of my Father Joseph's grandkids. Let's use his fall sprite for measurements. There are a lot of sprite making programs out there. Use your favorite. I know I've used Photoshop. This is Piskel. It's a free web browser editing application. I like to use it for just quick edits. In this case, showing you all my sprite, and then later we're going to be putting glasses on Howie because one of his events is when he gets glasses. So we're talking about the frames being 16 by 32. So in this case, each of my frames is about the size of this highlighted area. A 16 by 16 kind of goes across the top of his head, and then the top of his head is in the top part of the frame. An adult size sprite, of course, is going to be taller, and depending on how tall your character is, you may use up the whole height. You can, when you're making your sprite, use different dimensions, but you have to set those dimensions specifically in your character data. Default is 16 by 32, which is why I'm showing that to you. So each of these rows, frames, has a different animation. So when you're looking at your sprite, your top row is your walking facing forward. And then we go into walking facing right, walking facing backwards as if you were viewing them from the behind, a walking facing left. And then you get into different animations. So I have Howie reaching. I probably going to use this as getting a book down off a shelf or something type of reaching. Maybe going for a cookie jar. I haven't decided yet. That's actually one animation I put in there thinking I would use it and then haven't used it yet, which is perfectly okay. When making your sprites, I recommend doing things that you think you're most likely able to use and having them there from the start. We have Howie building his half of a sandcastle. I have his brother Louie has a similar animation, but the sandcastle is on the other side. So when they're sat next to each other, it looks like they're working together to build a sandcastle. We have him kind of shuffling his feet from behind. This I think I probably pair with his reaching animation. And again, I just haven't quite figured out what to do with that event. I have him playing with a car, which of course is based off of Vincent's car animation. And then I have him tossing a ball. So at some point, I'm going to have a animation. I have to make the object sprite of the ball. And I have his brother with the same ball catching animation facing the other way. And they're going to be passing a ball back and forth. This is his sleep animation. This is the school animation, so I've copied the pillow seats from the museum floor. So when they're sitting all around the table in the museum, he's got his pillow to sit on. The reason I included that in his animation is because Howie as a seasonal character, so he's only present during summer and fall. And I didn't want to add an extra pillow to the museum that wasn't going to be used half the year. Let me get into, I have him sitting right, left, and from behind. And we also have a sitting forward up here, like any of these I could use as him sitting forward. And the very last one, this is a special animation that I had to use Space Core to get the extra height on. This is his kite flying animation. So similar if you have somebody fishing or up on a ladder, you can have the extra tall or extra wide animations. You just have to program them into your animation data in a special way, which we'll do in another video so you can see how it's done. But I did include it all on the same sprite sheet. So the next thing is, how do you count your animations? Because if you're putting them in your animation data, or you need to reference a specific frame for an event. And again, we'll go over this in the other videos where that becomes necessary, but I want to mention it here. When you're counting your animation frames on your sprite sheet, always start with 0. So it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the end. Always start with 0. So now we can go to the fun part of actually editing our sprite frames. These are pixel art. So when you choose your program, do something that can zoom into the individual pixels. I know there are specific pixel-based programs out there. I also know I could do this in Photoshop if I wanted, but again, I'm using Piskel on the web browser just because I think for this particular need, where I just need to be able to do a single layer edit, I have layers. I just need one more layer. I have an onion skin so I can see what I'm doing behind, and then I just need to be able to draw in pixels. I find that this app works just fine for that. And that way too, if you're undecided on what program you want to use, you have an option that you can play with in the meantime while you're making that decision. So for Howie, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to choose my color. His glasses, I have decided, are going to be kind of black frames with an orange tint. So I'm going to slide the slider down to orange. I'm going to choose a not quite fully black, just slightly orange, so that when I put an orange accent on it, it'll make sense. I don't know if I'm going to do the orange accent in the sprite. I'm definitely going to do it in the portrait. So I'm going to start with the nose piece here. And I'm trying to decide if I want to go all the way around or if I just want to do that. The other way to do it, oh, that's kind of cute. And I can left. No, that doesn't quite look right. See, that looks kind of funny. I might do just that. I'm going to do just that to start. So every frame that I want him to have glasses on, I'm going to go through and just add this shape. And I'm going to do this on a separate layer just in case I make mistakes. I'm not going to mess up my base. This will also let me save the glasses as just the glasses and use them as an overlay. And the reason I'm thinking about doing it that way is because then I don't have to make seasonal glasses spray. I can just have a single overlay that's applied conditionally for after you've seen the event where he gets the glasses. And then, you know what? If you look at Pierre's sprite, he's got kind of that bluish tint. So we're going to add see how this looks. blue, his eyes are brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the color. Blue is going to make it slightly more green. Indicating lenses. And then in Piskel, you can highlight, Control-C, drag the shape over, Control-V, and it'll just paste. So if you ever want to copy paste, you can just do it like that. And then you can come over here, pop him out. Just trying to see roughly how he looks with glasses. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm just going to do the top of the frame because I think it's going to look a little too dark if I do the bottom frame. So then we're just going to go through all of the frames and make his glasses. We're experimenting here. So I want to differentiate it as the top of his eye as opposed to the pupil being weird. So we're going to use darker blue instead of the... There we go. It does look a little funny, but it'll do. All right. So now that I have all of the glasses drawn, so like I said, I'm going to make this an overlay. So I'm going to delete this bottom layer. And depending on what program you're using, this process may be a little different. But I always forget to put my settings correctly for saving a single layer. So I just go on the route of deleting the layers I don't want saved. And as you can see, this is missing a few frames where Howie was facing away from us where the glasses weren't seen. That is fine. When you do an overlay, it's going to just overlay over your existing sprite. So since our existing sprite has frames there, it'll be fine. And I will show you how to save in Piskel. So this is going to be character Howie glasses underscore overlay. Browser. And this will save it in my browser data, which means when I go to export it, I should still have the same name. Yep. And go to export. You want to make sure your slider is all the way at the bottom, because if you slide it out, it's going to save it as a larger variant of what you've actually made. And PNG, because that allows for transparency. And then we're going to go to double checking. I'm checking the right one. Yes, file export. So it's this top one. And that will go into your downloads folder. So in my folder now, if I go to downloads, oh, at the top here, there it is, at the top. We have his glasses overlay. It's already named what I want it to be named, so I'm just going to click and drag that into Howie's folder. And as long as I've... There it goes, and there's his glasses overlay. I'm going to copy this file name because I'm going to need it. So now's the part where we code our sprite, and I'm going to talk to you about how we do the whole sprite coding. I need to go back into, so I have it saved in my character folder under my assets. like I told you in our file organization video, I like to have my pictures separated from my data files. So just make sure that your sprite is saved in the place where you want all your sprites to be. Let me go into my data folder, and I'm going to find my sprite appearance file, which is this one. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you have a default sprite loaded, because if it's not loaded, it's not going to show up. So this is the top of my sprite appearance. Again, everything has to have open and close brackets. So you do your standard curly bracket, and then your changes with your square bracket. At the end of your file, you have your closing curly bracket, and then above that you have your closing square bracket. It does not work if you do not have your brackets in pairs, open and close. So then your next section is going to be looking like this, where you have open and closed curly bracket. If you have more than one, you're going to put a comma after your closing bracket, because that comma tells the program this is a new section to read, so it'll read it in sections. I like to put a log name, because if there's an error, it's going to tell me exactly where it is in my file. So in this case, we're looking at our Joseph default load in. So this is his very first spring portrait that you see. Your action is going to say load, because that tells it to load in the sprite, image, portrait, whatever you're loading in to start with. This tells it the file path for where that is targeted. So your target and your from file are going to be different. Your target is what you've set up in your character data with your internal NPC name. For Father Joseph, it's Father Joseph, just like that. Every time I reference an internal NPC name, it's got to be spelled exactly the same. And we'll go over this in a character data video later. So in this case, we are telling it to look at our character data and find the NPC named Father Joseph. And then for that, we are going to load the default sprite from this file path, assets/character/Father Joseph, and then character_Joseph.png. That's where the sprite is located and what the file name is. So we are targeting the character named Father Joseph, and we are going to this file path and then this file name to load in that sprite for this character. So if we look at Howie's, which is right here, Howie is in character Howie Davis, first name, last name. Your internal NPC name can be whatever combination you want, as long as it's always the same. And we'll go over this again in the character data video. My asset folder, character folder, Howie folder, his default character portrait is care_Howie.png. So for his glasses file, we are going to do something very similar with a couple changes. So I'm going to go down to where I have all of Howie's information. I've put all my characters in sections together, so their beach sprite and festival stuff, it was all together. So when you're talking about changing your sprite, now we're on his seasonal information. So you can do log name Howie Sprites. I'm actually going to add seasonal in here, seasonal, so that if anything ever happened with his seasonal, I would know it would be this part of code. Instead of load on your action, you're going to choose edit image. So that is saying, hey, the file we've already loaded in, we're going to change it now. We're going to edit it, so that instead of trying to load in something else, which I've discovered it seems to have a problem with, it is now changing the file path it looks at. It's editing the code that we put in previously, basically. Characters / Howie Davis is still the same because that's the same character that we're targeting. But now, because I want it to change his portrait seasonally, my file path, because I put everything in the same folder, is the same, but my file it's looking at, the file name is going to be different. So it's character _ Howie _ season. So what I've done, if we look at, I'm going to go back to his asset folder so you can see character Howie. I have a character Howie. Let's get him down here. Spring. I have summer. I have winter. Fall is up above here. There it is, fall. So I have one for each season with the different appearances for him. And instead of doing this 4 times, the nice thing about Content Patcher is you can put a token in. In this case, it's the season token. So what that's going to do is it's going to say character _ Howie _ fill in the blank. And it's going to look at, okay, season, and then Content Patcher has it so it knows to look at, we're looking for either summer, winter, fall, spring. And it's going to look at what current season in the game is and find my image file that has the matching season in this location. So if you notice, all of my file names have the same format, character _ Howie _ and then the season, so spring, summer. As long as you're consistent in how I do it so that your season token falls in the same space as the name of the season in your file name, you can put the season anywhere in here. So currently that is how you can do seasonal sprites with one little section of code. The next thing is festivals. Again, it's the same kind of code. Action, edit image, here's your file path, here's your file name. In this case, my file name matches the festival. And then you can add what we call a conditional statement here so that it's going to update when your sprite changes location. So when you walk into that event map, and it's going to update and it's going to pull the sprite for your festival if you choose to have festival sprites. There are different update keys you can use. In this case, I've chosen on location, and we'll talk about update keys in a different video when we do something that involves them more. It is in Content Patcher though, so you can go to the Content Patcher documentation and look up the different things if you want to. So then you have your when statement. So your when statement is going to be like your conditional statements, in that it's going to say what is happening and does it match what is happening. So in this case, it's a when the event is the luau and the location is the temporary luau map. So when you're looking at the original Stardew files, each event, so your luau, your winter's ice festival, winter star festival, egg festival, they all have their own special little maps, which is why we want this to say temporary. If you were doing something where your character always wore a swimsuit when they were on the beach map, for example, your location name would say beach, which is what that's for. So in this case, because we are on the event map on the day in which the luau is present, that is going to be when Howie wears his luau shirt, for example. And you can see I've done that for all of these. So now that we've gone over the basics of how you write your sprite coding, I'm going to go up here to Howie's special things, and I'm going to add his glasses sprite that we just made. I do like to copy and paste and then make the changes as opposed to write everything from scratch. I just find that's easier for me Some people like to write each line from scratch because it helps them make sure that they've added everything they like. I do the copy and paste for a couple of reasons. I'm prone to typos. There have been so many times where I've had everything correct and just forgotten one little thing, and it's messed up my whole file, and had to go to somebody else and say, "Hey, I need to borrow your eyes. I know I've got a typo in here, but I've looked at it so much I just can't find it." So for me, the copy and paste method helps me use code that I know is currently working so that if something goes wrong, I know for a fact it has to be in the code I just updated. Um, so we're going to do Howie Sprites, change that to glasses, so that if I get an error in here, it's going to show up in with the log name and I'll know it's this block of code. Again, we want the comma at the end of our brackets because that says this is a section and there's something after it you need to read. We are saving the edit image as is. We're saving our target same. That does not change. What we are going to add in is a patch mode. I am just going to very briefly check my code to make sure I do this correctly. So what I'm doing is I'm adding a patch mode. What I was double checking was how patch mode was written. Because your quotes, like your brackets, need to come in pairs, I like to write the quotes, then the colon, then the space, then the end quotes, and then a comma to tell it, look at the next line in the section. Every time you tell it to do a comma, that's saying this is a single section, there's something after me. Patch mode is written in camel case. Camel case is when your words are together, but the starting letter of the next word is uppercase. So if you look at the way log name is written, so it's patch with an uppercase P, mode, uppercase M, put all together. And in this case, we're telling it overlay. So what that does is say we're not replacing the whole image, we're overlaying something on top of the sprite that's going to be in use. I am then going to go and copy his file name just to make sure that I spell it exactly the same. And I'm going to replace the file name there, .png, because it needs to know what file type it's looking at. So now it's going to overlay Howie's glasses on top of all of his sprites every single time. But like I've already said, I've made an event where Howie goes and gets his glasses and then he shows them to the farmer. So what I need is to tell this you're going to only apply the glasses in these specific circumstances. So this is where you use either a condition statement or a when statement. In this case, I'm going to be using a condition statement. And again, I do my quotes. You can notice that this is staying the tan. That is because I did not have a comma after there. As soon as I apply the comma, you're going to see it's ready for the next line. Condition. And then this is where I have to thank everybody in the Stardew modding community. Make this bigger so you can actually see what I'm doing. So yes, so I ran this by my friends over at the East Scarp modding community to confirm that this would work. So this is a shout out to Dolphin is Not a Fish for looking at my attempts at a code and saying, well, you can merge it together instead of having two things. So what I had originally is just the game query, which was is event ID, and your ID is going to be your event ID number, which we'll cover in a different video. I have not written the event yet, so I'm going to leave this here because this is going to tell me when I write the actual event, I need to come in and I need to replace this. But Dolphin took a look and said, instead of doing this twice, you can do it once. Here's how you can combine it together. Really, really appreciate it because this saves adding code. So what the condition says is either of these statements true? Is it during the event that I still have to write, or has the player seen the event? And what's it's going to do is it's going to apply the glasses overlay to the event in which Howie gets the glasses and shows them to the farmer. And then every time you see Howie after that, he will be wearing his new glasses. So that is how we do a sprite overlay. I've also shown you how to do a seasonal sprite and how to load in your default sprite. I'm going to also include links to the wiki and I'll find the page in Content Patcher and include a link for that as well, so that you can go and reference the information as you make your sprites and things. I hope that was helpful for everybody. And until the next video, I hope you have a wonderful day.